Sean Deveney, Sporting News NBA writer. And, of course, the NBA playoffs continue. You can listen to the NBA playoffs tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN. And, Sean, welcome back, pal. The NBA playoffs have given us a lot of very intriguing storylines here in just the first round.
Yes, they sure have, Mike. It's there have been some surprises, that's for sure. I wasn't necessarily expecting that from the first round. I thought maybe in the second round we'd get that, but this first round has been pretty good.
Yeah, and I guess on top of that list, I don't know if it's a huge surprise. Like, I really thought that this was a bad matchup for Boston, but the fact that they're down 2-0, and it hasn't really been close. They've been dominated by the Bulls.
Yeah, they've been in a position where every time they've, tried to take control of the game or get back into the game, the Bulls have been able to respond. I think it's really come down to size, and you look at the Bulls, and they've got the big guys who can really take advantage of the Celtics' lack of size, and that's really been the difference. I mean, look, Dwayne Wade's been good. Certainly he was good in Game 2. Rondo's been really good in both games. Jimmy Butler's been was great in Game 1, very good in Game 2. But to me, the real difference here has been the fact that the Celtics can't get a rebound, and that goes back to the fact that they're just not big enough. And you have Robin Lopez. To me, that's really been the guy who's been the difference in this series, and I don't think a lot of people would have suspected that coming into this, coming into a 1-8 matchup, that it would be Robin Lopez who would be making the difference.
Sean, do they regret not making a move at the deadline, maybe for a rim protector?
Maybe for Nerlens Noel, for instance.
See how that connects?
About somebody with that. I think even if they weren't planning on signing a guy like that long term, I think that he would have helped them out tremendously in this situation. That's exactly the kind of guy they need. A guy like Taj Gibson is another one that came up and they didn't make a move on. I do think that they regret that. I think that Danny Ainge's thinking during all this time leading up to this point was that, look, LeBron and the Cavs are going to win the East. We know that. So let's not give up anything. Let's not make any knee-jerk reactions. Let's think long term. Let's think bigger picture. Let's keep picking up these draft picks and getting better and better. And they do have enough to sign a max free agent in the summer. So I think they're still in pretty good position and all that. But I do think that you would have liked to have seen some progress from them in this postseason. And so far, we have not seen that.
Sean Deveney, Sporting News. We're talking a lot about this Boston series because they're the 1 seed, obviously. Brad Stevens, many think that, he's the next great coach, and this Celtics team is like the model franchise because they're the 1 seed, and yet they have still plenty of assets, a word we hear in Philly a lot. But is Brad Stevens a guy that should be under the microscope here?
Well, yeah, to an extent. I mean, and it goes both ways. I think what's happening with Brad Stevens is that when a guy is crowned the golden boy, when a guy is we're all told how great of a coach he is, despite the fact that he hasn't won anything and done anything, a guy in that position is going to be susceptible to some blowback and a little bit of boomerang opinion. And so I think the fact that they've lost these 2 games, you can look and you can see he's 2-10 in the playoffs now. I think that he is getting that blowback. And, I don't think it's necessarily fair. I think the fact that they got to the playoffs the first year that they did, his second season, I think that was a bit of a miracle, that no one was expecting that. I think they had a bad matchup last year. They have a bad matchup this year, and the roster's a little, it isn't quite built for the playoffs. So, yeah, you can look at it both ways for sure. That this is a guy who maybe has been a little overhyped to this point, but at the same time, the rhetoric that gets thrown at him, now that he has this terrible playoff record, has been a little overstated as well.
All right, Sean, a couple games tonight. Toronto, Milwaukee. I was one that thought this was a miserable matchup for Toronto. I really like this Milwaukee team coming in and thought they would struggle. They beat them him in Game 1. Was that an eye opener for Toronto? Do you expect him to take control of this series now, or do you think this will be a long series between these two?
I had Toronto winning, but I had it 7 games heading in, and I haven't seen anything in the first 2 games to make me think otherwise. Milwaukee is such a long defensive team. You think of Giannis Antetokounmpo and the way that he defends and the way he's able to defend because of his length. And a guy like Chris Middleton, for instance, Malcolm Brogdon has been very, very good as a point guard defensively. That gives Toronto a lot of try. Toronto loves to run the pick and roll. They are the most frequent runner of the pick and roll of any team in the league this season. And Milwaukee's very good at defending that because they can switch. They have a lot of long arms who can sort of swallow guys up and they can trap. They have a lot of options defensively, and I think really you've seen Toronto struggle with that, and I don't think that's going to stop. I think going forward that Toronto's not this motion offense. They don't move around a lot. They're very much an isolation offense. They call a play, they run the play, and I think Milwaukee's pretty good at defending that. So I think that this is going to be a long series. I think what does Milwaukee in is its lack of playoff experience, but I think that they are good enough to give Toronto a very good series here.
All right, Washington wins last night. They're doing it with defense and backcourt. Between Washington, Toronto, I don't know if you want to throw Boston or Chicago in there, but have you seen anything in the East that makes you think Cleveland's in trouble?
No, and it's funny because we're talking about Toronto and all the problems that they seem to be having. I think Toronto would present the biggest upset threat for Cleveland. I'm not sure Toronto gets out of the first round though. But matchup wise, I think Toronto probably presents the biggest challenge. But other than that, look, what you need to stop the Cavaliers is a guy who can defend LeBron James one-on-one, a guy who can take him one-on-one for 28 to 30 minutes. An Iguodala, a Kawhi Leonard, somebody like that. And I just don't see that in the Eastern Conference. And as long as that's the case, then when push comes to shove in these playoff series, the Cavaliers are going to win, and I just don't see that changing this year, and probably not even next year either, to be honest with you. But certainly for this year, you could probably say that there is nobody in the East who can stop LeBron one-on-one, and as long as that's the case, it's going to be really hard for any team to put up a real battle against the Cavaliers.
Sean Deveney with us. Sean, Russell Westbrook goes off last night, and the Thunder still not able to get it done. Are OKC, they done, or can they get it back at it at home against Houston?
Well, I think the way they played last night certainly has to be encouraging. You have to think that they'll win one of their 2 games at home and keep this thing going at least to 5 games and get it back to Houston and maybe be able to do something with that. But look, when you look at it, the Thunder just don't have the horses to keep up with Houston, and there's just no comparison between the rosters right now, and there's no way that they're going to get over that. You'd like to see Russell Westbrook at this point in the year have a little more trust in his teammates and not dominate the fourth quarter he did the way he did last night. But in general, it looks like Oklahoma City is outmatched here, but I think they can still be good enough to win at least one of their games back in OKC.
How about Utah? I picked them to win this. Do you think that they are a factor in the West at all?
Well, it depends on Gobert. It depends on his health and all that. I'm very impressed with what Derek Favors has done, basically on one leg, because the guy's been hurt. But yeah, if Gobert is not 100% in that series, then it's going to be really tough against the Clippers. But look, the Clippers are also we've seen the Clippers in their recent history have some massive nosedives, and it would not surprise me if they go back to Utah, lose both of those games, and come back to LA down 3-1. So I think a lot of this isn't so much about the Jazz. It's more about the Clippers and what we've seen from them in recent years in terms of, like I say, the nosedives that they've taken in the playoffs, whether it was against Oklahoma City a couple years ago, whether it was last year with the injuries they had, and of course that series where they were up 3-1. They had a 19-point lead in one game against Houston and wound up losing that thing.
All right, Sean Deveney, Sporting News here, NBA writer, and the NBA playoffs continue tonight with three games: Cleveland, Indiana, Toronto, Milwaukee, and then that San Antonio, Memphis. Is there anything at all for Memphis and Portland to give them any hope?
I don't think for Portland. I really don't. I think that they're just so overmatched. I think Memphis, but they've played. They can slow things down. They've played the Spurs well at home in the past. I think there's a chance Memphis can win this game. I think that epic speech that David Fizdale gave on the podium after Game 2, that was just one of the best rants I've ever seen from a coach in the NBA. I think that could fire his players up, and I think that they could come out and certainly get a big lead against San Antonio in Game 3. But I'm not sure that if they can hold it. We'll have to see about that. But I think that at least gives them a chance. I think they'll come in with a lot of energy against the San Antonio team that might not be quite ready for that.
Do you think Durant comes back in this round, or they just say, you know what, take the rest of the week off?
Yeah, they've got to be careful because, a calf injury, if you've ever had a calf injury, you know that it can feel great one day and then just terrible the next day. So I think they want to give him as much. The one thing about the first round in any series is that it is dragged out over so much time that, if you've got an injury like that, and they went through this with Curry last year, if you've got an injury like that, you might as well rest the guy as much as you can because you're going to get about 2 weeks before you really have to put the guy back in there again. They'd like to get Durant reintegrated with the team, but more importantly, they want him healthy. So I think that's where the focus is going to be. I'd be surprised if he plays in the next couple games.
All right, Sporting News NBA writer Sean Deveney, at Sean Deveney on Twitter as the playoffs continue. Check out his piece talking about the Bulls and, of course, the Celtics. Check that out at Sporting News, and that matchup continues tomorrow night. Probably the most interesting storyline of this whole playoff. The 1 seed is in big-time trouble against the Bulls, who were just, a dumpster fire, it seemed like, all season long. They're pulling it together right now. Sean, appreciate the time, pal.
All right, Mike, thanks.